Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Marlon Bowling with you. Happy Thursday. And Thursday means that's when we get our weekly export sales out from USDA. Heck, we actually have a normal trading week this week, no holiday. And I want to talk about the numbers that just came out from USDA by bringing in Brian Hoops, and he's the president of Midwest Market Solutions. So, Brian, I just got the numbers in just a few moments ago. And as we were inputting them into the system here, the thing that jumps off the page, well, there's a couple of things on the grain side. Let's take a look at the numbers. On the corn export sales last week, I'm showing 407,200 tons. Soybeans, if you combine the old crop and the new crop, we had net cancellations of 249,000 tons. Yikes. Then you get to the wheat, and it went to the other extreme, 1.02 million tons of wheat that were sold. I haven't seen a number like that on wheat for, my gosh, a long time. What happened anyway? Can you explain that type of sales activity last week?
Yeah, good morning, Marlon. The reason you haven't seen a wheat sale like that in a long time because it hasn't happened in 10 years. This is the largest single weekly sale for wheat since 2013-14, 10 years ago, and it was a good number, really good number. China's stepped in, and they were the biggest buyer of the week for U.S. wheat. And we've been talking on your program here on the export sale mornings that this is a time of the year where we're going to dominate the exports, and we really need to be doing it. Our prices have dropped quite a bit. This is usually a seasonal low for the wheat market right around this time frame, and then prices start to try and move higher on better export business. And so I think that's kind of what we're seeing here is prices have dropped far enough now that some of these foreign buyers are stepping in and trying to buy some U.S. wheat products. The U.S. wheat is the cheapest in the world. We have not been able to participate in the Egyptian wheat tenders that have been out the last couple of weeks because protein levels not high enough, but China was a willing buyer. There were other countries as well to put together this really strong export sales number. Of course, that's a marking year high for the wheat market.
But how did they do that? I mean, there had to be a bunch of sales under 100,000 tons. Otherwise, it would have showed up on the flash reports every morning.
Right. Yeah. Usually you have to report anything over 100,000 metric tons on a daily basis, and there hasn't been any of those reports. Everything's been underneath that, and so apparently it's been a lot of purchases. So that's a little over 37 million bushels that they bought. It's a really strong number. The corn, the soybean numbers not nearly as strong. That's a marking year low for old crop soybeans. Once again, that's 13.5 million bushels of a net reduction. USDA just lowered this week here in the supply and demand report, just lowered the export forecast by 10 million bushels. They may be forced to lower it once again by another 10, maybe even 15 million bushels as we get closer to the end of the marking year.
Okay, you were my guest last night on our radio show on Sirius XM channel 147, and we were talking about the condition of corn and the fact, I brought up the fact they've been chopping corn in southern Kentucky because it burned up. Or it wouldn't pollinate. You were telling me that, it's much broader than that. What are you hearing anyway?
Yeah, it is much broader than that. Here in Missouri, western Missouri, been really extremely dry. It started off pretty wet, and the crop got off to a good start. But if it was planted a little bit later, like in the month of June, there's not much there, corn, soybeans, or anything. So we've been hearing clients also cutting some corn for silage at this point in time because they just don't believe that there'll be an ear that'll be produced. Soybeans, there's not even enough to cut for straw and bale it. There's just nothing there. It just has not come out of the ground because of lack of moisture. So it's a concern. We're also hearing concerns from clients that all up and down the western belt, from here up into Iowa, southwest Iowa, there's concerns that they won't have enough crop to even meet forward cash sale contracts that they've already put on the books. That if prices really rally in here, they could really be suffering because they won't have a crop to deliver. So there's been some interest in buying some of these cash sales back, despite the lack of any real commitment in the futures market to take off and rally during this drought situation that we've seen in the last couple months.
Yeah, excuse me. The December corn did close a little higher this morning. It was up 4 3/4. right at exactly $6. And then on the soybeans, they lost a little ground. November was down 9.25 this morning at 13.40 in the quarter. And then on the Chicago wheat trade, in fact, all the wheat markets were about the same. We had September Chicago wheat gaining 12 at 8.22 3/4. Gaining 12, and then right after that, they have this big export sales number. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, we'll pause right here, and Brian will take a look at our livestock numbers, the beef and pork, when we come back. Well, we're back talking with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Now, let's take a look at what we had for beef and pork export sales this past week. And actually, they were down quite a bit, too, from what we are used to seeing. The beef down to 9,200 tons is all last week. On the pork side, looks like we had a total of 18,300 tons. That was down 42% from the week before. That beef number, I understand, was actually a marketing year low, or in this case, I guess it'd be a calendar year low. That was down 17% from what we had the week before. Who bought what? Well, on the beef, it looks like Mexico picked up 2,900 tons and China bought only 500 tons this week. On the pork side, Mexico did buy 10,100 tons and China bought 1,600 tons. Now, Mexico was the biggest buyer of pork last week. On the beef side, the biggest buyer was Japan at 3,800 tons. So what do those numbers mean, Brian? Is that going to put pressure on the market here today, do you think?
Yeah, I think it probably will. Unfortunately for our cattle market, that's a marking year low in exports. You look at the economic numbers that have come out here yesterday and this morning, CPI, PPI, all above expectations, really high numbers. It tells us inflationary numbers and those, it's real negative, probably opens the door for additional rate hikes. That means interest rates going up for the consumer, and demand, that's the fear anyway, demand for beef will start to slow, not only domestically, but if we start exporting less product, we're going to start to see a backlog of product. That comes despite a little bit smaller cattle inventories that we expect to see in next week's cattle on feed report. Placement numbers should be down, marketing should be up. All that looks to be friendly, but it's not only a supply situation, but the demand we need to have a real bull market. And so I think producers really have to look at being defensive. We've had a day rally here in the cattle market, giving opportunities for producers to get hedged again if they need to get some hedges out, like maybe even to February, even into April. Those are some really attractive prices out there, and we just can't have a lot of confidence that the U.S. economy is going to be strong enough to support these price levels once we get there later this fall, despite tightening supplies and tightening numbers.
Right after that PPI number came out this morning, we have the Dow currently down about 500 points. The energy markets, the crude oil, West Texas crude, down about $3.50 right now. Live cattle yesterday, when we wrapped up the session, we had the August 20 cents higher on the day. The October was unchanged on the close. On the feeder cattle market yesterday, when we headed home, we had the August up $1.22. That'll be our starting point for today. And then on the lean hogs, well, you had August up $1.50 at 110.50. So we'll see how things kick off this morning with those very disappointing export sales. Brian, thanks for the help. Appreciate that. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Suzanne, this one should be very interesting, but then I guess they all are these days. Back to you.